Hello and welcome back to Bleeding Blue. This is a New York Football Giants history podcast. My name is Justin Panic. With me, as always, is Nikki Snacks, one of my best friends in the entire world. Snacks, today we interviewed Steven Taranto of CBS Sports. Toronto like the city. That's how he told me to pronounce it. Steven Taranto, CBS Sports. He wrote a really cool article kind of comparing, Phil Simms and Daniel Jones, like their kind of career trajectories. And we're all saying that this is a make or break year for Daniel Jones. And in fact, that, obviously it's not make or break in terms of his career ending, but we all like to be dramatic in sports. But that's what sports is about. We're dramatic. But also, Steven's here to say, take a breath. It'll be all right. Phil Simms' career turned out all right. Snacks, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Justin. Really, thank you for asking me. Thanks for bringing me on this week too. Usually you forget about me and whatnot, but no, it's really great to be. It's really great to be here, and this is the second to last of the season. So I think we did a good job, and Stephen was a very nice guest, very informative, very educated, very articulate, very cerebral too. I got a good vibe from him. He did very well. I enjoyed that interview. Daniel Jones will be a real estate agent in about a year and a half. So this was a very cool thing to talk about with the similarities between him and Simms, history and current. A lot of fun. And as always, I don't really know. But
as always, we're gonna throw it to the interview because that's how podcasting works.
Well, that's what I was gonna say, but I was testing you.
I see. I see. Yeah. So we talk with Steven on the the article is down. If you want to read it while you're listening,
you should read it. You should read the article.
Yeah, I would even recommend, I don't want you to leave and never come back, but I do recommend reading the article. I think Steven even does a good job breaking it down in between. So maybe if you want to read it afterwards, it's in the description, it's in the show notes. So go check out the article. It's linked down below. Snacks, like you said, this is the second to last week of Bleeding Blue. This is an off-season show.
I'm fucking sad, man.
I know it's sad, but we're gonna treat like basically the start of camp and August 1st as almost like the beginning of the season. We're gonna have the PPPs rolling out on the Talking Giants YouTube channel, so it's been a really fun off season. One more week left. We're gonna make next week really, really fun and wrap up No Medals for Trying. So without further ado, let's go to the interview though. Steven Taranto of CBS Sports. Hello and welcome back to Bleeding Blue. We are welcoming on a very special guest from CBS Sports, Steven Taranto. We are having you on because you wrote a very, very good article. We're going to talk about your career a little bit, talk about some of your Giants fandom too. But you wrote an awesome article. Giants legend Phil Simms shares how Daniel Jones can thrive in his third season as New York's quarterback. So, Steven, welcome on. You do some awesome work. Very versatile creator, content creator obviously is an umbrella term, but very versatile reporter. You publish a bunch of awesome articles and you're very versatile in what you're doing. Thank you for joining. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. You guys actually caught me on the tail end of a trip home. I'm back up in my native Eastchester, New York right now. So I've been getting some family time in before the season starts, and I'll be headed back to Nashville and doing my thing.
Awesome. So really where I want to start, because like I said, you really are a very versatile person, and how you go about and doing your work. I've seen some Panther stuff, and myself as a NASCAR fan, Bobby and I actually, and one of the reasons why I think we both really, followed and really have not only clicked the follow button, but really have followed you is with your stuff with the Giants and also NASCAR. So, really talk me through your career kind of so far and, how you kind of got to CBS Sports, because I know you just started that role. Congratulations. So take us through your career so far.
It's I want to say it's interesting because it kind of is, but so growing up, I was not a super hardcore football person, which is the opposite of my dad. My dad is a hardcore Giants fan, season ticket holder since the 1970s, obviously brought me up in it. But I really was into racing far more than football growing up. So that was what was on my mind all the way through school into college up until I entered the professional world. And really the thought that I had was that I wanted to be in the media business in NASCAR. I wanted to do something like be a PR rep for a driver, something on the social marketing side, what have you. But I really didn't have a solid plan as to exactly how I was going to do that. So I put my writing to work. I started freelance writing for a website called Motor Racing Digest, and I went to work for CBS Interactive in their ad operations department in New York City. After about a year of you know working the email lines, working the phone lines, trying to get to know people in the business, I ended up getting a weekend internship in the PR department at Charlotte Motor Speedway. And what I discovered that weekend was that a lot of people who were into official communications, all that stuff, started out in media. So I already had some of the freelance stuff going for me. I was like, okay, I might as well give media a shot. Around college, I went to Elon University in North Carolina. This was the period of time where the Carolina Panthers were becoming a really successful franchise. You had Cam Newton, Luke Kuechly, Ron Rivera coaching the team. So there was kind of a zeitgeist around the team, and they were becoming a very interesting cast of characters. And also, you could tell they had kind of this team of destiny thing going with the stretch with 3 consecutive NFC South titles, culminating in their appearance in Super Bowl 50. So I would say more so than the Giants, that team was really what got me interested in football writing. So after I do the thing in Charlotte, 24/7 Sports, which used to have an NFL department, they were looking for a writer to work on their NFL desk doing nights and weekends. So I applied for that, got that job, moved down to Nashville. The offices were in Brentwood in the suburbs, and so I did their desk for about a year before I ended up getting bumped up to a full-time Panthers writer. After a year, there were some changes within the company. I went to 24/7's overall desk, and that eventually availed me the opportunity to do a little more NASCAR coverage. Just because of the pandemic, there was really a content void, just because there were no live sports happening, but racing, and racing was a thing that I knew. So started. The good thing about the pandemic, if there wasn't anything good about it, was that you had more ease of access to teams, drivers, really all sorts of things in the sports world, just from the Zoom platform, media teleconferencing. So it was the great equalizer for me, just not necessarily being in one specific place where I can have physical access to people. So I did Zoom calls with NASCAR drivers. I actually did some Zoom stuff in Carolina, which was quite worthwhile. And a couple of months ago, CBS Sports, which has been looking to grow and expand their NASCAR vertical, basically said, we want your help with this. So that's what I'm doing. My primary role with the trending sports desk is racing. I've also got my hands in some other things. I'm entering my 3rd season now with the Ride Report, where I publish a weekly column about the Carolina Panthers. And then what am I forgetting? That's right. I every now and then I do some Giants writing, because what the heck, they're my team when I'm off the clock, and so I just know enough about them to I feel like do them justice and ultimately contribute a little bit to the narrative surrounding the team.
That's a fascinating career arc, and going from like into NASCAR, which you said was really your first love. And your dad's a big Giants fan, big football fan, but you weren't so much that way. And just looking through your Twitter and looking at your Twitter bio, it says you are a Giants fan. So I'm assuming that comes from your father, just like us, and just like most people, they pass it down. So I guess I want to ask, how you got into the Giants, like how you wanted to start writing about the Giants, and how you pulled this interview with Phil Simms and everything. So if you could just elaborate a little bit on what got you, I guess, started into writing about the Giants and doing Giants news and info and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I wasn't super hardcore as a kid. I don't like to admit that. I kind of feel like in retrospect, I took some of the Giants' success when I was younger for granted. But obviously, the Super Bowl run in 2007 was a seminal moment in my life. And then the
best time of my life, Stevie. Don't worry, best time of my life.
And then the 2011 run was fun too, and I was in college then, so I was living in North Carolina at the time. Was interesting, and I think I really started to become more conscious and more aware of the team as I got further into football and just discovering the league as a whole, because growing up I was kind of like on an island as far as being a hardcore NASCAR fan in the lower Hudson Valley of New York. So I couldn't necessarily relate to people that easily, but I found, and this ties into the overall life lesson of kind of getting out of your comfort zone and exploring other parts of the country and the world. And when I was in college, all sorts of NFL fans kind of converge, and you start to learn a little more about people who follow other teams and their experiences. And you're in another place. The Giants and the Jets aren't the team. The Panthers are the team. So that I guess from a cultural standpoint, that got me interested in football itself, and slowly but surely, it made the game more compelling to me. And then, as far as the Giants are concerned, obviously, I went to games growing up. When I went home in college, I would go to games. The season I spent the most time at the stadium, seasons I should say, were 2015 and 2016, because that was really the first time in my life I ever, went to most, if not all, of the games of the given season. So, so I've been trying to catch up in that regard in terms of overall football knowledge and Giants lore. I mean, hell, my dad can fill in most of the blanks for me, because he's got plenty of stories. Even from just, I don't know if you guys follow Big Blue VCR on Twitter.
Yeah. He actually came on the show a few weeks back. He's terrific.
Yeah, a while ago, I think he uploaded a video of the Ray Must Go chant from the Seahawks game in '92. And my father actually takes full credit for that. Him and his cousin, he said that because the Braves, I think, were in the World Series that year, the Tomahawk chant was in vogue. And at this point, the fans are really souring on Ray Handley as the head coach. So he claims, I can't verify this, that he started going, "Ray must go," and apparently the whole stadium joined in. I've got in this office here, I actually have the cover of the New York Daily News for the next day. Apparently with him, and they apparently photographed his section of the grandstand. So I have that verified. He's actually been on NFL Films. If you watch, what the heck was it called? That there was the documentary a couple of years ago on the dispute between Jersey and the city. It wasn't Jersey Guys, was it?
It was Jersey, the Jersey Giants, Jersey Guys. Yes, it was from the timeline.
Realm,
the timeline. That was very well done.
My father is actually in that. It's NFL Films, just from the parking lot. When they get to that part, they go for some fans during the 1970s, and there's my dad, thick, mustachioed, far thicker New York accent than I ever developed. But he's there, and we didn't find out until years later that it happened, and now he won't shut up about it. So, it's a good time. It was a good, I'm always at my dad kind of, me and my dad are joined at the hip when we go to games, and I mean, I've distanced myself a little bit from it, just being away and also being more of a professional. But who knows? I might take a couple Sundays off this season if I don't have anything going on.
You definitely should, because we missed all of last year when we weren't allowed to be in the stadium. So I'm sure returning to MetLife this year is gonna be great. Now,
well, I mean, hell, I skipped out on Kyle Allen throwing 3 interceptions against the Seahawks to go see Eli's final game. So no one can accuse me of being too hardcore in terms of, I'm a writer and I'm not going to be a fan, and which I mean, I don't mean to say that in a dismissive way, because when you're on the journalism, or at least the content side of things, you're the way you see things can change somewhat, but I don't know if I'm ever going to be in a position where I can completely like emotionally disconnect myself, for better or for worse.
Right. And I was always told like, oh, you should write about sports or something like that. I'm like, no, I can't do that. I'm way too biased. There's no way in hell I could ever write like a bad word about the Giants, even though I trash talk them all the time. So, I mean, that's all. It's all so fascinating to me. Now, the article that you wrote, the interview you had with Phil Simms, I'm gonna just ask it bluntly, and I'm not trying to be rude, but watch the show or not, if you know me or not, I'm a very blunt person. I'm very, maybe sometimes a little brash, but regardless, we watch Phil Simms on TV, whether he was calling games or he's in the CBS booth in the pregame and the postgame. We've seen his interviews. You got to interview him and talk to him on the phone. Is he as goofy and awkward on the phone talking to him directly as he is on television? Sorry, I have to know. I got to know.
Well, the interesting thing about it was I think I had the original emails I had with some of the PR people who handled Phil's stuff with the NFL Today. They said you'll have about 20 minutes with him. We ended up talking for about 35, and
Very cool.
a lot of it, there was a lot I couldn't use, and it was basically Phil just ranting about the state of the football media. And I touched on this in the article itself, just where I could fit it in. But it was him, he said things like, oh, analytics or the way we discuss quarterbacks, not going too far into detail about it, but every now and then it was like, okay, I got to get this. I got to get Phil back on track here. But then again, Phil Simms is like this in my mind. So how am I going to talk Phil Simms down? I might as well just ride it out.
Yeah, one of the things I was
didn't
actually going to ask you is sometimes when you talk to athletes, and we get this a little bit when we talk, we talked with Darnay Holmes, we're talking Giants, we talked with Nick Gates, and one of the things that I'm worried about with talking with athletes or former athletes is how much can we pull from them, to let their personality show. And I can imagine Phil is not that difficult to let his personality show. You don't have to do a lot of pulling to get him to get going.
No, he actually had some interesting things, and I think he said a couple things that were like, don't put this off the record, but there were some other things where it was like, oh man, the pressure of New York City, oh geez, that's so overrated, because I've traveled to a bunch of other cities in football media, and I've seen the way they trash their teams too. So, and then I think he was also talking about, I might as well talk to Boomer Esiason and ask him if he ever went to a game going, oh man, this is a big game. I got to make it happen, So just, there were plenty of things that he talked about where it was like, okay, this is just a football media cliche that I personally dislike, because the way it was framed was that the phrase "make or break season" as it pertains to Daniel Jones this year, it's been bandied about so much. I feel like I open up Bleacher Report every single day, and that phrase is just copy pasted into whatever
all we hear, yeah,
aggregate list they've decided to pull up that day. But yeah, anyway, the origin of that piece, and the reason I wanted to talk to Phil in particular about Daniel Jones is that my understanding of Daniel has always been kind of informed by what I understand about Phil's career. And I hope Dan Schneier does not mind me sharing this story, but I am going to throw him under the bus a little bit. So,
please do.
2019 NFL. What's up? What's wrong?
Please do. I would love to hear this.
Friend of the channel.
Yeah, Dan is a friend, so this is totally okay.
All right, so back in 24/7's NFL department, I was the Panthers publisher, Dan was the Giants publisher, and the draft that year was in Nashville, so obviously it was a big deal. Local to me, we had Kevin Boilard out at the draft stage itself, and so I'm honed in on Carolina's draft. They had the 16th overall pick, but granted, I knew that the Giants were probably going to selected quarterback, even though I was an Eli loyalist. I really didn't want that to happen if it didn't have to. But I was keen to the idea of Jones. It was like, yeah, you can talk me into Jones if we get like a pass rusher or whatever, and then we get Jones. I'll be good. Uh, so I'm kind of passively watching as I'm waiting for 16. It's like, okay, the Giants are up. Let's see what happens here. Uh, Jones is the pick. Uh, Everyone goes berserk, Dan included. And so I'm still focused on the way the board is falling, because this was my mistake, by the way. I wanted Cleveland Farrell for the Panthers. I thought Cleveland Farrell was going to be out of this world in the NFL. Hasn't happened yet. And I thought Brian Burns was too small to be a super effective pass rusher, and I turned out to be wrong about that. I'm sorry. So
We've all been wrong about prospects. Don't worry about that.
Burns is going to be all pro this year. He's going to, in an alternate universe where that 2018 Panthers team doesn't collapse after that 6-2 start, they're a little further down the draft board. I would have wanted the Giants to take Burns in that 16-17 range, even though I'm not gonna disparage Dexter Lawrence by any stretch of the imagination. But anyhow, this is happening, and I know just enough of my history to think to myself, hey, wait a second, didn't they do the same thing to Sims when he got drafted? And of course, Dan didn't want to hear it at the time, but sure enough, that comparison was made by other people, and I just wanted to almost revisit it, because the way that I feel like the way young quarterbacks are regarded in the football media now, any young quarterback in the league who isn't named Mahomes, people who are actively looking to push out the door in favor of the next big thing. It doesn't matter. I mean, you've seen what's been going on with Lamar Jackson the past couple of days. I think week 1 of last year, the Browns got blown out by the Ravens, and there was this stupid take out there. It's like, oh, if Baker Mayfield really struggles this season, the Browns should draft Sam Ellinger instead, which is just asinine in retrospect, but it's something that you have to contend with. So I decided to do a little more digging on what was being said about Phil Simms entering year 3, and there were some parallels that I found. There was a article in the Press and Sun Bulletin up in Binghamton, dated August 2nd, 1981, that I found particularly interesting. It was written by Paul Abramowitz. I don't know if that name rings a bell at all, but so many of the things that were said about Sims back then, you can say about Daniel Jones now, all the way from the beginning of the article, talking about the 79 draft. The Giants would have settled for respectability at this stage of the game. You get that way after a cluster of losing seasons. But the fans weren't looking for a quarterback. They were seeking a messiah. What they got was Phil Simms. Going on into later in the article, and this is what I directly quoted in the article for CBS itself. The jury is still out on Simms. By far, he's been the best the Giants have, but his inconsistency puzzles people. When he's good, he's very good, but when he's bad, he's very, very bad. Going on a little further, the blame lies with the quarterback. He's the target of criticism, and I think the Giants have gone 4-12 in 1980, because I know they earned the 2nd overall pick, which they used on LP.
Right,
and
worked out.
About Sims, more criticism is surely ahead. So I think someone on Reddit said time is a flat circle when I checked to see what the comments were on my article over there. And to a degree, that's true, but just back then, because the money isn't what it was back then, teams, fans, media had a lot more patience, and ultimately you could afford to carry multiple good quarterbacks, because there was no salary cap.
Right.
There were other financial considerations that weren't there like they are today. So really, there was no. I want to say there was no like impending sense of do it or else for Phil Simms back then, but there is for Daniel now, which is really why I wanted to kind of steer things in a direction where, okay, not only is this what Phil Simms, not only is this what, oh, let me ask Phil Simms about Daniel Jones entering year 3, but also to try and give context to what people think about young quarterbacks, what people think about Daniel in particular, just to show that there isn't necessarily no precedent for what's going on now. I feel like most things in football, most things in sports in general, have happened at some point in the past. There's very little that's truly novel. So that's what I was going for when I started planning this and pitching it.
Did Sims talk about the influence of the coach at all? Because we're reading a book called No Medals for Trying right now by Jerry Eisenberg from 1989, and this is obviously later in Sims's career, and he's well established. He's a Super Bowl champion already, Super Bowl MVP. But basically, Sims is hurt in that, hurt during that week. And the comments that Parcells made to the media was very much kind of dismissing Sims and kind of throwing him under the bus a little bit in terms of Sims isn't going to play unless he's 100%. Not saying, oh, I don't know what Sims is going to do, yada, yada. And we know just from, knowing Giants history, we know that Parcells was tough on Sims, but also we know that relationship was also, looking back on it, was pretty good. The fact that they won together and Parcells, pushed Sims when he needed to push Sims, but still Parcells, I would say, when it comes with the media, because I know Sims talked a lot about the media in this article, and he talked a lot about the media, which you couldn't report on. Did Sims talk anything about the influence that the coach has, whether it's personally, in terms of the confidence, like, hey, did Bill Parcells always say, you're the guy, you need to do this, or, even, the coach before, Ray Perkins. So did Sims talk at all about Parcells? Because I'm interested even, to know this dynamic between Judge and Jones, which Judge actually did go on a podcast, and he recently talked about the dynamic that he has with Daniel Jones too.
Well, I actually did ask him about something that Ray Perkins allegedly said. There was one, I think it was the Daily News that I cited, but at one point in Phil's first 2 seasons, because Phil was kind of outgoing about how he had a lot of doubts his first 2 years. He wasn't sure if he'd ever become a consistent quarterback. And, there was also the matter of, oh, I got to watch over my shoulder, see if someone else doesn't try to take my job. And eventually, Ray Perkins sat him down and told him, and I quote, just go out there and do your job and bleep everybody else. To hell with everybody else. I didn't necessarily speak so much about Parcells, but what he did say is that one of the great things that all great coaches have is the ability to understand the person they're dealing with and how to connect with them and what to say in certain moments. And he was very complimentary of Judge. And I think the question I asked him was that, well, role play a bit. If you were Joe Judge right now, what do you think the best thing to say to Daniel Jones would be? And I quoted that in the article. I think he said, everything the Giants have done this offseason is for the sake of Daniel Jones. I'm trying to find the exact specific quote. Here we go. Yep. We went on, drafted guys, signed free agents. Saquon's coming back. We're doing it all for you. So really what the Giants' plan of attack here is to make sure that they give Daniel Jones a chance to show everyone the sort of quarterback that he is. I mean, he talked more about quarterbacks harnessing the power of position for themselves and really being the guy that everyone follows and responds to, which is something that you're starting to see some of the younger quarterbacks in the league do and master. I think Josh Allen and Baker Mayfield last year were 2 very good examples of that. Where it was like, okay, this guy is the alpha male of this team. We're following him come hell or high water. And so I think in terms of position, that's where his focus was. But we did talk a little bit about the coach's role, but ultimately there wasn't anything super revealing or crazy about Parcells that I didn't already know, because I think he was telling the story last year of how when Daniel was having not the yips, but when Daniel's turnover issues, quote unquote, were a thing. I think Sims shared the story of how Parcells once told him when Sims was being too conservative, Phil, if you don't throw 2 interceptions a game, you're not trying. So,
it's a good way to look at it.
What's up?
I said it's a good way to look at it. It's true. That's one thing I always respected about, like, just say Eli, for example. He's got all these interceptions, yeah. But at the end of the game, he's down 14 points. He's not, he's still slinging it. He's still throwing it down. He's trying his absolute best. So I love that.
That's also what we really liked about Daniel Jones's rookie year too. And
right,
then Jason Garrett took that away from him. I'm not.
Well, let's not talk about people with red hair, okay? Because we all suck. I don't want to talk about Jason Garrett right now, okay? That's not the point of this show with Steven. All right, he gave his time, and you just shouldn't sit there and try and ruin it. But Stephen, from your article and from what you're saying now and everything, the similarities between Sims and Daniel Jones are very, very, like, spot on. I mean, in the article, and Sims talks about, and he says, make or break year. We didn't really know about that. They were more patient back in the day. Now it's like all we hear about is this rookie quarterback contract. You got to win in that rookie quarterback contract or that window right there, or else like a failure. And what Sims was saying is like they were more patient back then. They brought you along a little bit better. But there was a lot of vitriol from Giants fans when they drafted Sims, and there was probably 20 times more vitriol when they drafted Jones. So the fact, if Daniel Jones has even the smidge of career that Phil Sims had with the Giants, we're going to consider that a success. And I think that you captured all of that so well, and you brought out the most in what Sims was trying to push on us and what he was saying. And I just want to say great job on that. I don't really have like a question, so to say. I wanted to just mention that in reading the article, I love just seeing how similar these situations are in 2 very drastic eras of football.
Yeah. Well, I think piggybacking off of what you were saying a bit about how, if a quarterback doesn't do so and so in a window, they're never going to win a Super Bowl, and it's all for naught. It's like, and even in the 1970s, this was happening, as referenced by the Binghamton Sun Press article I mentioned. There's always been that sense of, we're not just looking for a quarterback at the top of the draft. This player is going to save the franchise. This player is the ascendant man of destiny who is going to, win us 3, 4, 5. He's going to be the greatest ever. And, most of the time, and Phil actually said this to me, I wasn't able to find a place for this because obviously, I think all Giants fans, myself included, would like to see Daniel Jones win Super Bowls. A lot of quarterbacks who go at the top of the draft will have very good careers and will not win Super Bowls. So let's take, from Giants history, let's take Kerry Collins for example. Kerry Collins had statistically a very good career. I think he was in the top dozen passing yards all time. Led multiple.
Yeah, he was amazing.
Teams, led the Giants to a Super Bowl 35. Also compelling from a personal standpoint because of the personal demons he dealt with in Carolina. So all told, Kerry Collins was a very good NFL quarterback, but it's okay. So Kerry Collins lost the Super Bowl to an all-time defense and never got back there. Okay, so is he a failure? Is he just a mediocre? You won with him, not because of him. I don't buy that. I really don't. And I think what we're doing now with quarterbacks, and I will admit, full disclosure, that some of this came from my frustration about what people say about Jones as a fan. But you see this league wide. It's not just Daniel. And I think Tua Tagovailoa in Miami is the perfect example of this. Ascendant man of destiny, Miami Dolphins. Alabama Crimson Tide quarterback, national championship. Oh, he's going to be great. He's going to be fantastic. Has a winning record his first year. The Dolphins don't make the playoffs. We didn't. What are you even good for? We got to get another quarterback instead of you.
There was fans on Twitter screaming and like First Take and ESPN and Colin Cowherd. They're like, should Miami consider taking a quarterback after like 8 starts from Tua? Come on.
Yep.
It is a little excessive.
Same stuff with Andrew Thomas too. It's like, okay. Tristan Wirfs had a great rookie season. Jedrick Wills had a great rookie season. Mekhi Becton was pretty good when he stayed on the field.
Which he can't.
Okay, so so Andrew Thomas had an up and down season. I seem to recall Lane Johnson not lighting the world on fire his first season in Philadelphia. As much as I hate to cite anything with the Philadelphia Eagles, but
Scum City, Scum fans, Scum team. Yep.
The future is not written after one season, and another thing I want to touch on, because I think this was a point of discussion with Dan Duggan at The Athletic, or it was Kim Jones's conversation with Dan Duggan. And I think Kim Jones was asking people about Daniel Jones and whether or not pocket presence could be improved. And there were kind of mixed things there. And there were some things about, you have it, or you either have it or you don't. I don't know. It's just so much. There's so much. It has to be now. He has to. You have to show this immediately, or else you're not the guy. At the risk of going on a tangent, it's just there's almost no room for. I'm kind of losing my train of thought.
Well, I mean, it's margin of error too, and Steve, kind of piggybacking off of Snacks, complimenting you a little bit more. Part of why I've really enjoyed the stuff that you've put out, it is because like I didn't need to read your Twitter bio, and I didn't need you to come on the show to confirm that you were a Giants fan, that you are a Giants fan. And I think this is where content, I maybe even a little bit of journalism, it's where it's going, and it's where people's interests are going. People, I think, don't just want to hear unbiased stuff anymore. People kind of want to hear a little bit of the bias in there, and it's okay to, and it's the thing is that you have to recognize it. So I could sense, like, I know your Twitter, I've read your, I know some of your thoughts on the Giants. I could sense some of your authentic, genuine feelings on Daniel Jones as you were kind of writing about your conversation with Phil Simms. And I love that. And that's okay. So here's like the last question I want to ask you to wrap up. And I want to thank you for coming on again. I'll give you a chance to plug everything when we're done. But I want to ask, especially as a journalist and, as somebody who talks to a lot of different people, whether it's athletes, coaches, scouts, whoever, who talks to people, and especially to hear Phil Simms, you as a reporter and as a journalist, right? Yeah. You're hearing Phil Simms rip the media, and, he did it, some things that you can't say, and he did it. And it was obvious, even just apparent in the article itself, that, Phil Simms, either didn't like the media when he played, or he especially just doesn't like it now. But how does it feel as somebody in your, like, you are working in media and you are media? How does it feel like you're on the line with somebody and they're ripping apart kind of your profession? Like, how do you kind of take that and kind of roll with it? And, is it something that maybe you take a little bit personally? So I've always wondered about that, especially here. It's like, all right, I'm a reporter, I'm a journalist, and you're ripping kind of like my professional part. So how do you kind of feel about that? How do you take that?
Well, there's actually a quote by Hunter S. Thompson that I've become quite fond of, and I can't share it. I probably can't share it on here just because of some of the language used, but it's the.
Oh no, you can. This is Talking Giants is more of the PG show. This is a show where you can.
Okay, let me get the full thing up going. You can decide whether or not you actually want to use this. Journalism is not a profession or a trade. It's a cheap catch-all for fuck-offs and misfits, a false doorway to the backside of life, a filthy, piss-ridden little hole nailed off by the building inspector, but just deep enough for a wino to curl up from the sidewalk and masturbate like a chimp in a zoo cage. So about...
Yeah,
we will definitely. By the way, we will definitely be using that, because this is a pro cursing.
Oh my God.
This is a pro cursing podcast, because fuck shit, bitch. Don't worry about it.
We'll break that down for me. Break it down.
All right,
please. So, this might be my favorite breakdown on this show's history.
Uh, yeah, I can't quite remember what that was in reference to because Fear and Loathing was just so schizophrenic. It was a drugging novel, so how could it not be? But I feel like in what I do, because I didn't go to school for journalism, I actually wanted to. I originally wanted to be a professor. As a matter of fact, I majored in sociology at Elon, so I was going more toward intellectual type stuff until I realized that I didn't necessarily have the work ethic or the philosophical leanings for it. Uh, but anyhow, so that's allowed me to be a little bit separate from the traditional journalistic hive mind, to the point where I'd almost say I'm not a journalist per se. I do journalistic things, but ultimately I would say I'm more of a content guy than strict journalist per se. So so I think uh, so I think that's what I would say. I would be like, okay, you're going to criticize the media. Actually, hell, you're right. This is a sordid profession. It's terrible. It needs to be reformed. Now, granted, if someone thinks I'm a shill for somebody, I'll say, hey, I disagree with you there. Uh, I basically disagree with what you think about the media, but don't take it don't personally attack me about it because I'm not the media, quote unquote. I'm an individual. I'm Steven. So that's what I would say to that. It's I like to try and be a bit of a renegade, bit of a independent, bit of a free thinker. So I'm not necessarily going to spend a lot of time caping for my profession, uh, as it were. So so if you ask me about criticizing the media now I will say in the field's defense, this is it does take a certain skill set to be in media or be a writer and be really good at it. And I've always tried to be a little more discerning and cut through what gets said in the common, what the popular narrative is, and trying to see whether or not that's valid. Which again, tying back to this, is kind of what I did with what goes on with Daniel Jones. But I think there is some utility in being critical about the media field, but at the same time, ultimately, a big part of my job is analyzing, disseminating information, and ultimately knowing what I'm talking about. So sometimes people will run with crazy things like, oh, I heard this, and this is the truth. It's like, no, that's hearsay. Calm down. Uh, Eventually, you'll get really good at that if you cover Cam Newton for 2 years. Because, boy, let me tell you, I heard all sorts of things about Cam those last 2 years in Carolina, and some were valid, some weren't. So that's without going on too much of a tangent, that's where I kind of leave it at.
Awesome. So Steven Taranto at CBS Sports, thank you for coming on. I am going to leave your article, so go check out the article. I'm leaving it in the description, the bio. If you're watching on YouTube, it's in the description. If you're listening on the podcast app, it's in the show notes. So Steven, why don't you plug where you're at? And Snacks, you have something to say.
You never let me say goodbye to the guests.
You know what? Because isn't that like podcasting etiquette? Like the main voice of the show always
you know what? Some may argue maybe it's my voice.
You do have a very nice voice.
Whatever.
Steven, why don't you plug where you're at and where everybody can find you?
All right, so on Twitter, I am @storanto90 at @storanto92, writing for CBS Sports, which is where you'll find my NASCAR stuff, some of my NFL stuff, also some assorted sports as well, which I've had the opportunity to cover. You can also go on Riot Report and find my coverage and columns of the Carolina Panthers and former Giants assistant offensive line coach Matt Rule. So if you're interested in teams beyond the Giants, I do some writing about them as well, and that should cover all the bases.
Awesome.
Giants Panthers. They play each other this year, so you got to check out Steven's coverage. Yes, Snacks.
I'm saying goodbye and thank you.
All right,
go ahead.
Thank you, Snacks. I appreciate that.
Don't say thank you, Steven. Thank you for coming on. You do great work. That was a phenomenal article. We really appreciate the insight, and I got to tell you, that is one of the most fascinating, career arcs that I've seen from NASCAR to football and everything in between, from the Panthers to the Giants and everything. So we genuinely appreciate you coming on, and thank you for your time. Keep up the great work.
Yep. Well, someone once told me that there's no magic bullet as far as a media or sports career. So I've just been going with what works, and somehow it's led me to the point where I guess enough people think I'm good at what I do to pay me what they do. So
Yep.
I'll just keep on proceeding in that direction.
Yep, you definitely are, and the hard work pays off. So thank you again, Stephen.
Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Stephen Taranto, CBS Sports. Once again, remember, articles linked down in the description. It's linked down in the show notes, so go check it out. Go give Stephen a follow on Twitter, too.
Yeah,
Does not have enough follows. Does not have enough followers. I think he really does deserve more. He just started working with CBS Sports a couple months ago. It's really, really cool. He even did a really cool thing by putting Talking Giants in the CBS Sports article. When we interviewed Daniel Jones's trainer, he did a really cool thing. And he's like, hey, this is what Daniel Jones's trainer had to say about Daniel Jones. And, he gave us credit, and he linked us, and he linked, the interview and the podcast app or YouTube, whatever. So that was really, really cool of him. And he didn't have to do that. And it's kind of a cool moment, Talking Giants being on like CBS Sports and being on like a major website. So thank you to Stephen Taranto. And Snacks next week, our final week.
Yeah, man, I'm going to cry.
Yeah, now we're going to cry, but we're going to have a lot of fun. So until then, we will see you next week. And Snacks.
Fuck Tiki Barber.